The only thing guaranteed in life is change. Things are chaotic, they're always in flux, things are shifting, always shifting, ever shifting. And that's why life is exciting. That's why it is compelling. And that is why, when I want to escape from the chaos that is life, from all the uncertainty, I pick up good books. Because I open up a book and there's magic on paper. There's a start of a journey, there's a middle of a journey, and there's an end of a journey. And there's some comfort in that. So it was nice to wake up on this really cold, rainy, muggy Sunday morning and realize that I have been tagged in the reading shift tag by Rid from Rid Books. This tag was created by Hannah's Books. Question one: how has your reading developed over your lifetime? Do the kinds of books that bring you the most pleasure now differ from the books you loved most earlier in your life? If you've seen big changes in your reading since you've matured, what might explain your changing interests? So I wasn't a reader growing up. In fact, I remember distinctly trying to read the first Harry Potter book in, I believe, fourth or fifth grade, and opening up the book and realizing that I did not have the ability to understand it. And it was a disheartening, humbling, bad experience that made me realize and think to myself that I wasn't a reader, that reading was not for me. So I just played video games and I played outside. I did roughhousing things. I did not read. I was not a reader. I was insecure about it. So when I got moved to a private school in fifth grade, and now I was surrounded by kids that were even more intelligent than me, more clearly intelligent than me, more well read, more had a lot more advantages, I just wasn't a reader. And I remember when all my friends were reading Jane Eyre and To Kill a Mockingbird, books that were required reading at my school, I didn't read the books because I couldn't. So I would just wing it. I would look up Spark Notes and I'd figure it out. But I never read a book for school that was required reading. I never did it. And honestly, the first books I'd read for enjoyment ever, I think it was sixth or seventh grade. It was Percy Jackson and the Olympians and Deltora Quest. And it wasn't until, like many young men, it wasn't until I had a crush on a girl that I picked up something else. I was reading Percy Jackson at lunchtime. I looked over, saw my crush reading Twilight. I wanted to get the girl, so I picked up Twilight. I read the Twilight series in eighth grade, and that was a humongous accomplishment because they're big books, especially if you're a kid. I read them, did not get the girl. I realized that reading fiction was a waste of time, and I primarily read nonfiction through high school. I remember reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and thinking to myself, if I just keep reading nonfiction, I'll be smarter than everybody around me. I will be successful. I'm not going to waste my time reading stories. And I got to college and I felt good about myself because I was so well read about philosophy and history and politics. And it led to me thinking very highly of myself. So I became this guy that everyone knew read a bunch of books. I would read 100 books a year, almost like all of it nonfiction. And I thought I was pretty smart. I thought I was very wise. And it wasn't until I met my wife that I started reading fiction again. We started dating, we were talking. I figured out that she was a voracious reader. And I tried to flex and show off and be like, well, I read only nonfiction. I'm really smart. And she was just like, oh, I like this book. This book's a lot of fun. And I wanted to relate to her. So I started reading fiction and talking to her about stories. And, I got the girl. So it worked that time. I got the girl from reading fiction and I realized it wasn't a waste of time. So, funnily enough, the shifts in my reading tastes, the catalyst for all those shifts, historically, have been the women I was trying to date. And I like where that's led me. Question two: do you find yourself choosing different kinds of books at different periods of the year? For example, do the seasons affect what you read for pleasure? Similarly, might you read very different kinds of books while on vacation? I don't read seasonally. I can't even follow a monthly TBR. I stopped doing them because I feel like when I plan out my reads more than one or two books at a time, I feel constricted and I end up reading less. So I just read books that I'm feeling like reading at that very moment. Do I read on vacation? No. As a rule, I don't read on vacation. I feel like there's so much stuff going on when I'm not in my everyday routine. I wake up, I go to work, I come home, I eat dinner, I read, I go to bed. My life is very simple. The moment I don't work, You'd think when you have a day off that you're gonna read more. That is not the case for me. I feel like because of some deep-seated issues in my brain, I can't enjoy myself until after I've done the work. So I feel like when I'm on vacation, because I haven't earned the right to enjoy a book, I'm kind of just making vacation like a job. I'm trying to do as much as possible when I'm on vacation, and I don't think it's healthy, but that's just what I do. Question three: do specific experiences in your life ever shape what you choose to read? For example, did you read obsessively about child rearing when your kids were little, about gardening as spring is about to begin, about the experience of grief when someone you love died, etc.? Short answer is no. I feel like we have one life. I'm not going to ruin the experience of my life by trying to follow someone else's blueprint, by trying to read about it beforehand. I feel like a lot of people are dissatisfied with their life because they read about how things are supposed to go. And then when they see that their life does not exactly fit into that box, they feel like they're somehow living their life wrong. For example, I just turned 30, and all my friends, we're all starting to have kids, we're all starting our families. And I could have read a book about becoming a father. I could have read a bunch of books while my wife was pregnant, and that would not have prepared me to be a dad. I feel like the best way to live life is to be present in that moment, to be open to what you are experiencing it, and to focus on what you are feeling and thinking at that moment. Not trying to follow the 7 point plan about how to adjust to becoming a new parent. At least for me, I remember when I picked up my daughter for the first time, she was just born, and I realized there is nothing I could have read. There is no YouTube video I could have watched. There was no amount of research that could have prepared me for that moment. Because it's a life experience that you have to experience to truly understand. So I feel like a lot of things in life, especially the big things in life, I want to go into it just open to the experience. I feel like that's what makes like life exciting and beautiful and wonderful is that you get one playthrough and it's all your own. There's so much magic in reading, but there's more magic in living. So I try not to read books that tell me how life's going to go, that prepare me for a new thing, because I feel like if I'm going to put to words what I'm experiencing in my life, I'd rather them be my words, no matter how inarticulate and thought out they are. That's just my philosophy. Question four: have there been any times in your life when circumstances have limited or changed your reading in some way? Perhaps caretaking responsibilities, or a big move that made it hard to find as much time to read as you'd like, or personal illness that made it harder to concentrate, or maybe just long term travel that might have limited your book choices. How do you deal with those circumstances? I don't think there's been a time in my life as an adult where I have not been a reader. I feel like it's important to give yourself grace as a reader. Just because you are not currently reading a book at this very moment does not mean you are not currently a reader. There have been years where I've read 100 books, and there have been years where I've read 20 books. I'm still a reader. I was reading to my wife while she was in labor of our first kid. I was reading The Haunting of Hill House. That was a very stressful situation. I was still reading. I find time to read no matter what is happening around me. I have read books when moments before I was crying about something happening in real life. I have read books during all types of seasons of my life. I feel like I've never been in a mental state where I could not read for any extended period of time. Like there are days where you just can't concentrate, but for the most part, no. I feel like I've been a reader consistently for the last decade, and I've read in sunshine and in rain, and I think I'll be reading forever. Question five: BookTube is full of discussions of reading slumps, when dedicated readers seem to lose interest for a while in books. Sometimes they just can't find a book that appeals to them. Have you ever experienced a slump? If so, how do you handle it? If not, do you have any advice to give people who are experiencing slumps? I feel like the easiest way to avoid reading slumps is to not force yourself to read books you don't feel like reading. And this is more of a problem on BookTube because a lot of booktubers, most of us, are trying to grow our channels. And you grow our channels by finding your audience, and your audience generally reads a set amount of genres. So a lot of booktubers are reading books that are all in adjacent markets, so to speak. And I feel like it's very easy to get burned out and to fall into a reading slump when you're reading only epic fantasy for several months. Anybody would get tired of that. It does not mean that the genre is no longer a genre you love. It just means it's a little too much of the same thing. I love chocolate ice cream, but I cannot eat it every day for every meal. I can eat it for a few days. I can eat it very often, but not every day for every meal. And I feel like it's the same for reading. When I feel like I'm in a slump, I switch genres. If I'm sick of reading grimdark, I'll take some classic traditional fantasy that's very noble bright. I'll pick up nonfiction, I'll pick up science fiction, I'll pick up literary fiction. I feel like as long as you are open to changing things up, as long as your TBRs are not set in stone, as long as you're willing to adapt and change depending on your mood, you will avoid reading slumps. Question 6. Booktubers also talk about book hangovers, when readers are so moved by a book that they find it difficult to move on to a new book. Have you ever felt this way? I feel this way all the time. Luckily, I found a cure for book hangovers. It always works for me. Try it out. Whenever you finish a story, whether it be a standalone or a series, and you feel that book hangover coming on, you feel the melancholy, you feel the big sad coming to take hold of you, go to the opening passage of that story. Go to the first book in that series and reread the first paragraph or two. And I think with the added context and knowledge you have of the story as a whole, it gives you a sense of closure. I feel like what distinguishes between a good and a great opening line is this. A good opening line will get you to read the book the first time. It hooks you, it builds momentum for the story, it gets you to read the entire story. But a great opening line, a perfect opening line, is better the second time. When you read the story and you know how it ends, and then you read the opening passage and everything is in its proper context, you see where the story is going to go, it always closes the loop for me. Question 7. Tell us about a few books that almost always work for you. Something that might have remained a favorite throughout your life despite any changing reading taste. Something that always seems to hit just the right spot when you need a lift. Or perhaps some lifetime book hangover where the text will always be at the back of your mind. This is a hard question for me to answer because I don't reread books. I detest rereading stories. I feel like out there in the ether, out there in the real world, there is the perfect book for me, and I have to find it. It's out there. I'm going to find it. I'm going to read it, and it's going to change me, and I don't have time to waste. So I don't reread books. But there is one book in particular that comes to mind when I'm thinking about this prompt, and it's The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. It's hard for me to put it into words, but I'll try to explain it like this. At the center of my being, at the center of my soul, there's two opposing forces. One wants me to go on the grand adventure. It wants to go on the epic journey. It wants to slay dragons. It wants to gamble everything for glory. It's a very risky life, but there's a big payoff. And the other half of my being, fighting for control, it wants the beautifully mundane, comfortable life. It wants to lay down roots. It wants to make friends, start a family. It wants the comfortable life. It wants to be safe and stable and cozy. And a lot of us can relate to Bilbo Baggins because I feel like a lot of us would choose to go on the grand adventure if we were guaranteed we would not lose our home. We would not lose our safe, cozy lives in pursuit of that grand adventure. And Bilbo Baggins has the perfect journey because he goes on an epic journey. He faces off against dragons. He travels the world and he comes back to the Shire and nothing has changed. And I feel like in my life, what I've always tried to obtain is I want to accomplish my dreams. I want epic struggle. I want great difficulties. I want to be able to come home and lay on my wife's lap and watch my children play and enjoy the simple, mundane routine that I've built for myself here. And I feel like all of us can relate to that. We all want things that are in opposition to each other, and we're trying to find that balance. And that's why The Hobbit is timeless to me. I read it when I was in 8th grade. I read it again when I was 24, and it's timeless to me. And that's one book I'm going to be returning to in 2026 for sure. I enjoyed this book tag. Thank you for tagging me, Rid. I'm going to tag Jimmy Nuts from Chatting with Nuts. No pressure, but I feel like a live stream where you talk about how your reading tastes have changed over the years, how you transitioned from the fantasy network, who primarily read fantasy, to the eclectic, well-read reader you are now. That would be very interesting video, at least in my opinion. I'd love to see how you've changed as a reader, what you think the catalysts were. That's what I want to see. Thanks again for tagging me, Rid. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll talk to you guys next time.